Good morning, dear students. Today we will discuss questionnaire design. Basically, we will be discussing how to design a questionnaire, or you can say some basic things which we need to consider while designing a questionnaire. In our last video, we discussed how to measure attitudes. In most of the questionnaires, we generally measure attitude of people towards different things or companies or maybe individuals, or maybe about some thought or something prevailing in the society, right? So now we will be taking help of that particular measurement of attitudes while designing the questionnaire. So let us discuss what questionnaire is and how should it be designed. It is not every question that deserves an answer. Yes, 100% true. So you must be very careful while designing questions in a questionnaire, because you might get, zero responses to some questions in your questionnaire. And then the whole questionnaire is going to be unuseful for us. Answer to a question is very frequently a function of the question's wording. So it's very important how do you phrase a question so as to get the required answer. For example, do you own any stock? What does it mean? For some people it might not mean anything, right? So you should be very carefully designing the questions in the whole questionnaire. Every question is very important here, so we are going to learn how to design it. So first of all, let us see what questionnaire is. Questionnaire, whether it is called a schedule, interview form, or measuring instrument, is a formalized set of questions for obtaining information from respondents. Questionnaires are an efficient data collection mechanism when the researchers knows exactly what is required and how to measure the variables of interest. For example, first of all, questionnaire is basically a kind of schedule, or you can say a piece of paper which has all the questions listed on it for the for interview, and it is majorly known as measuring instrument, while measuring attitudes mainly, right? And it is actually a formalized set of questions for obtaining information from respondents. So basically, when I talk about questionnaire, I'm talking about schedule as well. I am talking about a measuring instrument, or I might be talking about the interview form, or maybe I can be talking about formalized set of questions. That's it. So there are so many things the way I can explain that this particular piece of paper is a questionnaire when I design a questionnaire. And it is really considered as efficient data collection mechanism. It's the one of the best mechanisms to collect data if we can do required labor, you can say, or we can spend time on it. It is efficient data collection mechanism when the researcher knows exactly what is required and how to measure the variables of interest. One thing is labor, another thing is time, and then money can also be one of the thing you need while designing a questionnaire. And then to measure things are, researchers should know what is required and how to measure that. If you know that exactly, then it is the best technique ever while collecting the data. Then important while designing a questionnaire, it is generally said that a survey is only as good as the question it asks. Uh, Survey actually depends on how good questions you have put in the questionnaire. Survey basically is a kind of interviewing people for one particular purpose. We have discussed it already. Then it is one of the most critical stages of survey research process. Yes, when you are going to do a survey research, then questionnaire design is the one of the very critical stage. So you need to take care of a lot of things while designing it. Then it appears as easy to compose as does a good poem. It really seems like that it is very easy to compose. No, it's not that easy, but it's not very difficult as well. You just need to take care of a few things. You need to use your common sense, and grammar should be good. And sometimes it's like you have to design the questionnaire as per respondents, not as per you. not as per the researcher, because of course you would be understanding everything written in the questionnaire because you have designed it, or it is at your level as researcher, but respondent should also understand what are you trying to ask in the questionnaire. Or if you do not want researcher to know whether that what is the purpose of the research, that's okay, but still respondent should understand that much, that how should he answer to the question so as to at least solve your purpose as researcher. In the major decisions in questionnaire design, let us discuss them. These are relevance and accuracy. If questionnaire is not relevant or it is not accurate, then the whole process is going to be vain. So this is very important, and to meet these following decisions can be needed. Number one, you should know what should be asked, how should each question be phrased, what should be the sequence of the questions, what should be the layout, how should it be pre-tested, and does the questionnaire need to be revised after pre-testing or not. Generally, after pre-testing, if you feel like that some questions were not asked from the respondent, or maybe you might feel like that respondent answered a few questions very well but not other few questions, or maybe you might feel like after getting the pre-testing done that some questionnaires were repeated, so you can remove those questions after the pre-test. Or maybe you might feel like that some of your questions were remain unanswered which were not in the questionnaire, so you can, you can modify the questionnaire after pre-testing. This is the whole purpose of pre-testing. That one is you'll get to know whether people are comfortable with everything related to questionnaire, and another thing is whether it needs further improvement to answer all the questions, all your research questions you have in your mind. Then what should be asked? This was the first one. What should be asked? Problem definition indicates type of data to be collected. Your problem indication should indicate everything related to data collection. Then questionnaire is relevant if no unnecessary information is collected, and if the information needed to solve the problem is corrected, right? So that means we are talking about two things. One, that you have collected all the relevant information. Second, that you have not collected irrelevant information. That means you have not wasted your time just to collect anything just like that. You have actually collected all relevant information only. So these two things are important here, and these two things are going to actually save your time. One, because if you would be asking unnecessary questions, it would waste your time and money, right? And due to that only, you might, your some of your questions might get unanswered because it might get bored. Then accuracy means the information is reliable and valid. If your questionnaire is accurately, is accurately measuring the whole attitude you are going to measure, that means it is information you are getting would be kind of reliable and valid. Then there would be another test for reliability and validity, that is another thing. How to phrase the questions? You can phrase questions in two ways. One is open-ended and another one is fixed alternative. We even call them as close-ended questions. So we will be having two kind of questions. One is open-ended, that means pose some problem or topic and ask the respondent to answer in his own words, right? For example, you have been asked the question and you are supposed to answer on your own. You are not given the options to check or uncheck like that, yes, no, or true, false, or some, nothing is given to you. You have to answer the question by your own, in your own words, right? Then fixed alternative questions, we call them as close-ended questions as well. For example, respondent is given specific limited alternative responses and asked to choose one closest to his or her own point, her own viewpoint. For example, you might be asked, did you work overtime or at more than one job last week? And for that, you might be given alternatives as yes and no. Then it is basically your fixed alternative question, or say close-ended question. If you were not given the options, then it would have been open-ended response question, right? Then type of fixed alternative questions. Open-ended means open-ended question. There are no other types. There are no further types for open-ended question, because you have just constructed a question, structured a question, and you have left it like that to get the answer, right? But when it comes to fixed alternative questions, we have so many categories in fixed alternatives. For example, there might be questions like where two responses are to be provided, yes or no. Sometimes we provide options like yes, no, and then can't say as well. Sometimes you might be trying to measure something on a 5-point scale. You might be trying to ask somebody whether it is true or false. Like this way you can have different kind of fixed alternative questions. So let us discuss them one by one. Number one, simple dichotomy or dichotomous alternative question. Then determinant choice questions, frequency determination questions, attitude rating scales, and checklist questions. Simple dichotomy or dichotomous alternative questions are the questions which would generally be having answers in yes or no. Then determinant choice questions means you will be provided with 3, 4, 5 options, and you will be choosing one out of them. Like we talk about multiple choice questions. Then frequency determination questions means you will be asked for example, yes or no, whether you like the product or not, something like that, and then frequency would be calculated on that basis. Then attitude rating scales, we have just discussed all the attitude scales in our last video. All of them would come under this category, all attitude rating scales. That means you'll be providing rating on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 7, 1 to 10, or you might have decided a scale like this, like cut scale, something like that. Like you have an option, you have options like select from 1 to 5. 1 is total disagreement and 5 is total agreement, and in between are the options. That can also be done. Then checklist questions, that means you have provided a list of answers with a question, and the respondent can choose either 1, 2, or more than 2 responses from the list of answers. These can be the type of fixed alternative questions. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantage of these questions? Open-ended questions, its benefit is it's beneficial for exploratory research. Yes, when you are going for exploratory research, you need to have more open-ended questions than fixed alternative questions. Then responses have flavor of conversational language that people use. Yes, you will get to know what kind of the language people use when you are not providing them alternative just to pick. They will be writing in their own language. You'll get to know how they express their views on something. Then valuable at the beginning of interview. Yes, these are very valuable at the beginning of interview, because you might think like that you know a lot about this interview thing and about the questionnaire, about the survey, but when you actually go and talk to people at the time of interview, you actually ask them open-ended questions, then only you get to know the depth of the problem. But it has certain disadvantages as well. Yes, its cost is substantially large. Why? Because data editing, data collection, framing of data is very easy in fixed alternative questions. You have to just fill in the choice. But when it comes to open-ended questions, data editing cost becomes a little more than fixed alternative questions. Then job of coding, editing, and analyzing the data is extensive. Yes, it is extensive, and it takes a lot of time, and even data analysis is not very very easy after that. It is just good in exploratory research, not in descriptive and causal research. Then may be influenced by interviewer bias. Yes, when you have got fixed alternatives, you will be ticking them as in the flow of all the questions. But when you have to reply to open-ended questions, you get more influenced by the interviewer bias. It happens. Then better educated and higher income group people give longer answers, and people who are not educated, they tend to give smaller answers, and that really give you contorted results, and that is not good for the study. Then fixed alternative questions, its advantages: require less interview skills. Yes, you have to just go and give the questionnaire to the respondent and he'll just fill it, right? You interviewer skills is not required. I mean, not much interviewer skills are required. Then it takes lesser time. Yes, definitely easier for respondent to answer. Sometimes respondent stop responding because of open-ended questions, and they try to respond more to fixed alternative questions. Then comparability of answers. Yes, you can actually compare the answers. Then coding, tabulating, and interpreting the data is comparatively easier than open-ended questions. But it has certain disadvantages. One is overlapping in dichotomous or multiple choice questions. Yes, we have discussed dichotomous or multiple choice questions overlapping. We can avoid them. We can actually avoid them with the help of proper pre-testing. Then lowest category avoidance, yes, it happens. Generally, people tend to reply here also to impress interviewer sometimes. Then unanticipated alternatives, yes, sometimes we provide alternatives as per our own knowledge, and we just don't provide some alternatives which were really important, and because of that sometimes we get little less answers from people which have some other alternative answer in their mind. Then social acceptability factor, yes, this is also there. Because of that also, sometimes we fill the questionnaire but we don't understand it completely. Finally, developing a questionnaire, it's not very hard, and there are no hard and fast rules. There are only some guidelines, and you should be knowing art of asking the question. Guidelines are: number one, avoid complexity, use simple conversational language, avoid leading and loaded questions, avoid ambiguity, be as specific as possible, avoid double barreled items, avoid making assumptions, and avoid burdensome questions. Let us discuss them one by one. Avoid complexity means words you used should be readily understandable to respondents. For example, when effluents from a paper mill can be drunk and exhaust from factory smokestacks can be breathed, the humankind would have done a good job in saving the environment. Is it easily understandable question? No. So you should be using simplest questions so as to get the maximum answers. Now, don't you agree that what we want is zero toxicity, right? Replying to this question is more easy as compared to this one. Avoid leading questions. How would you avoid them? Many people are using dry cleaning less because of improved wash and wear clothes. How do you feel they have affected your use of dry cleaning facilities? How would you answer this? Suppose you are asked this kind of question, then how would you answer this? You can easily answer this particular question, right? Though it is also a kind of loaded question, but still after answering this particular question, you will be trying to answer in the same way for this question. So we should avoid such questions. Then avoid loaded questions. For example, suggest a social desirable answer, or are emotionally charged, maybe, or maybe invoking status quo is also a form of loading. Partial mention of alternatives, partially you are providing some alternatives and partially you are not, so that is also not good. That is also kind of loaded question. Then counter biasing statement, sometimes we provide two statements in a question and these are not fit with one another, they might be opposite. Then split ballot technique, so the split with the help of split ballot technique, you can split the whole question in 2-3 parts, and then you can see whether it was a loaded question or not. Then avoid ambiguity. Ambiguity means you have to be Ambiguity means being unsure. So you have to be asking questions in 100% sure manner, and if you are providing options, then you should be providing alternatives properly. Example, it arises due to indefinite words like often, occasionally, usually, regularly, frequently, good, fair, poor. You should avoid using such such words until and unless these are really required. For example, which one of the media do you rely on most? Then avoid double barreled items. For example, sometimes you try to ask two, three things in one question. For example, covering several issues at once, or maybe results are difficult to interpret then, because you are asking just one question, and in that one question you are trying to get two, three answers. Then compilation and then their interpretation is going to be really very difficult, because sometimes people try to answer first question, sometimes second only, sometimes both, so it's very difficult to compile it. For example, are you satisfied with the existing library maintenance system? This is one question. And then, are enough copies available? This is second question. Are required books ordered promptly? These are three questions basically, and you might be asking them in just one question. This is what is called double barrel. We should avoid it. We can be dividing this particular question in three parts. Then avoid making assumptions. Yes, you should actually not make any assumption uh, about the people or respondents. For example, should TPO expand its excellent menu? Or do you think anti-incumbency factor resulted in BJP losing the general elections? For example, you sometimes give just general, statements about something. TPO is a tea shop, and they are providing tea, coffee plus some, Maggie, pasta related things, and then lunch at lunchtime. That's it. So, and they provide tea and snacks for the whole day. So it is like, should TPO expand its excellent menu? What do you mean by excellent here? Right? So this is how we should stop making assumptions. We cannot make assumptions on our own, and you cannot make the assumption that everyone should be knowing what TPO is. Then avoid burdensome questions. Yes, these should be avoided. People forget telescoping, squishing, unaided recall, and aided recall. So you should be avoiding burdensome questions. They can't be recalling each and everything on their own. So and recalling something sometimes, take a lot of time, and then people get bored of the questionnaire, bored of the question answer session, and then they leave it in between. So you should take care of these as well. Then how to design actually this questionnaire now. Question sequence should be proper. There should not be an order bias in among the questions, within the questions. Then you should be using funnel technique. You are a funnel technique is, though we'll be discussing it later, you are asking general question in the starting, and then you are being specific in the end. That is called funnel technique. Then filter bias. Yes, you should be filtering the questions. For example, you might be talking to somebody who might not know anything about the issue. Then you can put a filter question like whether they know anything related to this or not. In as per yes or no, you can proceed to another questions. If it is a yes, go to second question. If it is a no, go to fifth question or sixth question, something like that. Then question layout. Yes, that is also very important thing. So these are the things. uh, Till now we have discussed that what are the things to be taken care of while designing a questionnaire, but now we will actually start designing the questionnaire, though we'll be designing a questionnaire in our next video, but still these are little basic things which need to be considered. Then how warm up, your sequencing of questions should be like that it is actually warming up the respondents. You are trying to talk to them normally in the starting, like what's your name, what do you do, and something like that. What are your views on something related to this? and that then you can start with the questionnaire, actual questions for which you need to get the answers, right? You can start your questionnaire with basic details of the respondents which they can easily provide you. You should not be asking them their phone numbers and their phone numbers and their email addresses, their proper residential addresses and something like that, so that they can easily reply to. Then no demographic or classification questions up front. Yes, you should not be asking such questions in the starting. Then embarrassing or awkward questions at the end of or the mid or in the middle. You can put some you whenever you feel like that these questions are a little embarrassing or awkward, you can put them either in the end or in the middle of those questions which you feel like that might make the respondent feel better, little lighter. Then filter questions and pivot questions. These are also very necessary. You should actually put filter questions in between, whether the person know about this issue, yes or no, and then according to the reply, the person should be able to jump one or two questions if they are not related to that person. Then order bias. How would you take care of the order bias? Results from position of a question. For example, low visibility elections, specific questions before broader issue questions, and funnel techniques. If you use these two techniques, you will be able to save yourself from order bias. Then layout. Yes, this is also very important, especially for long questionnaires. It should not be overcrowded. Margin should be decent on all four sides of the paper. Then white space to separate blocks for print. Yes, that should also be provided. It should be made to appear brief. You should try to make your questionnaire appear brief so that it looks little smaller than it actually is. Then multiple grid layout if space is to be preserved. Sometimes you have 10 questions, 10 questions such that their answer must be from 1 to 5. Then you can collaborate them in a form of table and grid. Then phrase the title carefully. Title of the questionnaire is very important so that to lure people to respond to the survey. That's it. Let us discuss some true false. For a questionnaire to fulfill a researcher's purposes, the questions must meet the basic criteria of relevance and accuracy. So, is it true? Yes. For a questionnaire to fulfill a researcher's purpose, the question must meet the basic criteria of relevance and accuracy. This was the first slide of this PPT. Then a questionnaire is accurate to the extent that no unnecessary information is collected in order to solve the problem under study. Is it? This describes the relevancy actually. So it is false. Then third is there exists a step-by-step process for ensuring accuracy in the wording of questions in surveys. What is it? No, there is no step-by-step procedure for checking the accuracy in questions because that can be generalized across projects, right? So this is false. Then fourth is question wording and sequence can substantially influence accuracy. Yes, it happens. It really influences the accuracy. So it is true. Then fifth is fixed alternative questions give respondent specific limited alternative responses and ask them to choose one of the closest of their viewpoints. Yes, these are the actually fixed alternative questions. So it is true. Then some self-assessment questions. List the key decisions in questionnaire design. What are the key decisions, right? We have discussed it in the PPT, like what should be asked, how should the question be framed, and in what sequence your questions be, something like that, right? Then second is compare and contrast open-ended and fixed alternative questions and give an example of each. You have to discuss both kind of questions completely, their advantages, disadvantages, along with examples. We have discussed enough examples in the video. Then last is name and define the primary types of fixed alternative questions. We have discussed all the types of fixed alternative questions. You have to just list down and define them properly with the help of examples. That's it. Thank you. In our next video, we'll be discussing steps to design a questionnaire. Till now, we have just discussed how a questionnaire should be, what are the things to be taken care of. In our next video, we'll be actually going, step by step to design a questionnaire. Thank you.